Welcome to the Stardom Situm Show presented by Bridgestone Tires. I'm Michael F. Florio, joined by Adam Rank. I'm hosting this week because our friend Kimmy Chex is getting married, so a big congrats to Kimmy and Jason. But Rank, as you know, the longest married person on this show, any advice for the newlyweds?
Yeah, always know where you want to go to eat. Like nothing will start a fight between a couple more than not knowing where you want to eat. Hey, what do you want to eat tonight? Have an answer ready to go. And if you've been married long enough, I always like to have a one because I always feel like my first suggestion is going to get knocked down. It's kind of like when I put out this Stardom Situm list, and you're like, "Yeah, I don't like that quarterback." So I know that, so I have to think. So I always say like macaroni grill, and then just because I know that's going to be rejected, and then I go to the answer that I really want to say, which is usually like Rip Beer Company. But whatever, but always know where you want to go to eat, and your life will be fine.
That is good advice because me and Nicolette struggle all the time to decide
All the
what we
time.
want to eat.
Have a dummy.
Literally. We'll start talking on like Wednesday.
That's the thing. Make sure though that the place that you want to go is some place that you actually would go to if you do get called on it. That's why macaroni grills always say for me, like, okay, it's never my first choice, but it's like if I have to go there, I'll be fine. The bread's amazing. Get some wine. It'll be a good time.
Great marriage advice, but I know you people watching came for fantasy advice because it is championship week. So, Rank, let's take a look at some quarterbacks that you would be starting for week 17.
Let's take a look at that, by the way. And it's so funny, too, because I know Internet Guy is nowhere near close to being made. Why are they talking about marriage? I'm still waiting to get asked to the prom. I like all you kids on YouTube. Yeah, you're not going to have to worry about this for a long time. Let's take a look at the stardom, though. I love Jalen Hurts this week. Matthew Stafford, based in part of what Joe Burrow did last week against the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll dive into that in a little bit. Kirk Cousins, which might be a point of contention with you, but I think we'll all agree. Ryan Tannehill, great quarterback. I don't think you can start him in fantasy. Matt Ryan, on the dome quarterback on the road. No, thank you. Tua and whoever the other guy was. We're not starting him.
And one quarterback, though, that you said was Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow with the Bengals versus the Chiefs. I know a lot of people are hoping to get a championship out of this game. Why do you like Burrow so much this week?
Well, the Chiefs defense is very good. Obviously, they've allowed like single digit points in 3 out of their last 4 games. They've been a great stretch. I just have a lot of confidence in Joe Burrow. It wasn't really just one game that he had against the Baltimore Ravens. I understand this was amazing, and he was out there chasing Norm Van Brocklin's record. By the way, that name's worth a Google. I think that over the last couple of weeks, he's been very consistent. He has actually been one of the more consistent fantasy quarterbacks this season. As you see right there, those numbers on the board are correct. Close to 25 fantasy points per game, including obviously last week's great outlier. But I think that this ends up being a higher scoring game. I think Joe Burrow's up for the challenge. I think that a lot of times if there were lesser quarterbacks, I might be apprehensive starting him against the Chiefs, but I think Joe Burrow is definitely one of those must-start quarterbacks.
I would agree. I think he is a must-start quarterback unless you somehow have him and another stud, but I think a lot of points will be scored in that game. Friend of the show, Rank, Kirk. We don't even call him by his full name anymore.
Stop.
He's just
no,
Kirk.
He's not.
He's not a friend anymore?
He is, but let's not rub it in.
Okay. Well, Kirk Cousins, otherwise known as Kirk, you have him as a start this week despite a tough matchup against the Packers.
It really is a tough matchup, but as I was doing the rankings, and I know you do the rankings on NFL.com, I had him at QB 12, and I'm like, I didn't feel great about it, but I'm rolling with it. I think that if we've gotten this far with Kirk Cousins, if we survive the game where he threw for 87 yards against the Steelers, there isn't too much I need to be worried about. I do know that he's got a nice history against the Packers. He's struggled in his last 2 games at Lambeau. And I am a little bit worried. I know the dome quarterback's going outside, but I think that when you have a player like Justin Jefferson out there, it gives me a little bit more hope that he's going to be able to go out there and perform well.
Yeah, I don't love Kirk Cousins this week. I'm similarly as ranked as you, though. I have him currently as my QB 13. I would have him a little bit lower if Lamar ends up playing, and I could slide Lamar ahead of him. But the reasons I don't like him are what you said. It's a tough matchup against the Packers. He has struggled in Lambeau as of late, and it's supposed to be like 20 degrees out there. I don't want to play in 20 degrees. I don't think I want to start Kirk. in 20-degree weather as well. So I agree with you, Rank. I'd start him over all of those names down there, but ideally I wouldn't want to start him. I would get Trey Lance or Taysom Hill, someone like that over him.
That's those are the two names that are the biggest problems for me is Trey Lance and Taysom Hill. And I know that like looking at your rankings, that to me is the biggest sticking point. How do you feel about Russell Wilson though? Because Russell Wilson has been terrible statistically over the last couple of weeks. The weather in Seattle, it's supposed to be around 3 degrees around kickoff time, raining. Like it's going to be like I feel that's a big Rashad Penny game. So I just get into this thing of Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's a Michigan. I know he's a dumb quarterback, but he went to Michigan State. He played for Washington. He's played outdoors before. I know that it's prime time and everything, but I think that Kirk has been a little bit different this season. I'm looking for 20 points. I think he can do it. I know that I'm going to have to end up wearing this at some point, and it's going to make me mad at him forever. And I'm just going to refer to him as Cousins. But I think, like, I personally, I'm starting him over Russell. I'm starting him over Taste. I'm starting him over Trey Lance, too. I think Trey Lance hands the ball off a ton.
For me, it would be Lance and Hill, and then I would have Cousins and Russ as the second two in that group. But I agree, all four of those are super close. Kirk, don't let your biggest fan, Adam, rank down. But Rank, people out there have a lot of wide receiver questions as well. So who are some receivers that you would start and sit this week?
Well, we love A.J. Brown. There was a clip floating around the internet of me last week on a different podcast talking about starting A.J. Brown. So what up, dogs? Christian Kirk, Hunter Renfrow, Devonta Smith are my starts. Terry McLaurin has not been great over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, this all is about the quarterback situation. I think he's averaged less than 6 fantasy points in his last 3 games. He needs to enter the transfer portal along with DJ Moore. They should be a combo that they're going to transfer to Chicago, maybe. I don't know. Do what you got to do. But yeah, it's unfortunate having to sit Terry McLaurin this week.
But Devonta Smith was on your list as a start. He goes up against Washington, who gives up a ton of fantasy points to receivers. We saw what the Cowboys just did to them last week. So for you, if you have Devonta Smith, you're firing him up in your starting lineup?
Yeah, he's still a low-end wide receiver, too, for me. Obviously, a slant. If you start 3 receivers, I would be shocked if you have if you have 3 guys better than him this week. You might. I don't know. You made the championship, so it's quite possible. But I really like his talent, and I think that, we got to see a little bit on display last week. Great matchup this time against Washington. The only thing that I fear is what happened with the Cowboys last week. One of the reasons why I didn't like Dalton Schultz as much was because Washington is so bad against wide receivers. So we loved Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was great, by the way. CeeDee Lamb and all those guys. And then Dalton Schultz still goes out and has a good game. So I feel like Dallas Goedert's going to have a monster, but Devonta Smith should still around 15 fantasy points. If that'll work out for you, then I would suggest that you start him.
And one of the names you have there, you touched on him a little bit earlier, was scary Terry McLaurin. And the only people scared by him lately are the ones who have them on their fantasy roster. So if you're one of those people that have Terry and you made it to the championship, you're saying get him far out of your lineup this week.
No, that's true. And it's, again, I think a lot of people, again, you make it to this round, you've pretty much settled on your roster. And I know that, this might be for DFS people. Oh, I didn't realize. There it is. See, they're making me look smart. I did. Actually, it's been longer since the last 3 weeks. He's really struggled. And it all comes down to the quarterback position. And that is one of the things like they're going to have to address in the offseason, what they're going to do at the quarterback spot. It was fun to see Taylor Heinicke play well against Tampa Bay last year, given a shot this season. And we kind of understand why they went for Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think the Washington coaching staff knew a little bit more than we did. And so they got to address that quarterback situation. Maybe they bring Kirk Cousins home. Maybe Aaron Rodgers goes. I don't know. This is Russell Wilson. Well, I don't know. But they got to do something at the quarterback position. And until Terry, and this really goes into next season too, Michael, is what do we do about him next year? Like if they don't upgrade at quarterback, he's not somebody that we can trust this year or next year.
Yeah. I completely agree. He is one of the receivers I'm most hoping gets a quarterback upgrade. But like you, Rank, I would be sitting him this week. 6 targets or fewer in 4 straight games. He's basically good for single digits and a random 20-point game. I don't like his chances of hitting his upside in this tough matchup against the Eagles. But Rank, people have questions about a lot of other positions. So coming up, we're going to go through Rank's must-start running backs for the championship round. You won't believe which under-the-radar guys he's saying are going to ball out and get you a title this week. It's time for Prepared to Perform, presented by Bridgestone Tires. Rank, walk us through your RB list for this week.
Oh, no problem. Sony Michel leading the way along with Devin Singletary. Tony Pollard, to me, even though he shares time with Ezekiel Elliott, is still worth a start, as is Rashad Penny in a game that could feature a lot of running. Saquon Barkley, of course, the big name here, but I think a lot of people have come to the conclusion that Saquon Barkley cannot start. If Saquon Barkley is on your team and you're in the championship, you likely haven't been playing him anyway, so I don't think this is too much of a I don't think that's too much of a revelation. So I think that unfortunately we now have to leave him on the bench.
And someone that was on your starting list, Sony Michel, no Darrell Henderson there going up against a banged up Ravens defense. So you're saying just fire him up this week?
I think internet guy is a little bit better than Instagram guy, because that video was running on Instagram. People like, hey, why is Sony Michel there? Like, what about Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers? Like, first of all, Darrell Henderson not playing. Cam Akers is not coming off a torn Achilles and taking time away from Sony Michel, a guy who's really carried this team over the last couple of weeks. And what we've seen out of him, the numbers right there on the board are correct. 110 plus scrimmage yards in 3 of his last 4 games. And Sean McVay, as much as we love the passing offense of Sean McVay and Cooper Kupp, likely the fantasy MVP, Sean McVay loves to run the football. Like, there were a few teams that ran the ball more inside the 5 than the Rams coming into this season. So for me, when they have Sony Michel now starting to hit a groove, and I don't know if they were slow playing this all along and now unleashing him come playoff time, but that to me seems like what's happening. And you look at some of the big names right here. I'm starting Sony Michel over all 3 of those dudes. I have no hesitation. I think he ends up in the top 5, maybe the top 3 this week for running backs. I have no problem starting Sony Michel.
I'm not quite as bullish on him as you, but I really do like Sony as well. And I don't think Cam Akers, I mean, Sean McVay kind of give us the real reason. They're doing it for pension reasons for him. He needs to be active for 3 games. Maybe he gets a couple of touches, but I think Sony is a lock for at least 20 touches this week. So I'm very high on him, just like you are, Rank. But someone that I know, and it brings a tear to my eye to say this, someone that I know we're both very low on this week, Saquon Barkley, and you just sit him, right? Like, if you have him still at this point, you can't start him.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are what they are, and watching him play, it's a bummer. I don't know how else to explain it. To me, it's like watching Star Wars Episode 9. Like, this should be so much better. Like, how is the Book of Boba Fett so good, and yet Saquon Barkley so bad? Or Episode 9. Actually, Episode 9 is Danny Dimes. I think I used that analogy previously. But here, the difference is it's a huge bummer watching what he has become and thinking about guys that we're not going to draft next season unless he's traded like the Bills or Tampa, not even Tampa Bay, but like somebody like that. I can't even imagine drafting him next year. I'm curious to see what his ADP will be, because unless the Giants fix the offensive line, they're going to bring Joe Judge back. Like, this is a guy that you are just absolutely not going to touch in fantasy next year.
Yeah, remember when he used to be able to break out like 60, 70, 80-yard runs like it was nothing? Well, that's long gone. I mean, he hardly gives you 60 rushing yards each week. He has yet to really go over 100. He's pretty much single digits, maybe low double digits. He needs a touchdown to score over 15 fantasy points. I'm with you, Rank. I say if you have Saquon Barkley in your championship game, you sit him. But Rank, I know if Kimmy was here, she would say it is her favorite position. A lot of people have questions when it comes to tight ends. So why don't you take us through some starts and sits for this week?
Well, we talked about Dallas Goedert a moment ago. Love him against Washington. I don't care what the numbers are. Cole Kmet, Foster Moreau, Noah Fant. For sits, we're talking about Brevin Jordan, Jared Cook, Kyle Pitts. Excuse me, I'm getting verklempt. Having to finally turn on Kyle Pitts, but that's going to be a difficult one for me. And I guess there was one more that I forgot to mention. I don't know. It's week 17. What tight end are you sitting? Like, you know who your tight ends are. Like, you're not fishing. It was probably Gerald Everett, and I probably changed my mind or something like that.
One name that I saw there that I spoke up as a waiver wire pickup because I liked him as a streaming option this week was Cole Kmet going up against the Giants. And you have him as a start this week. So convince people that they should be picking up your Chicago Bear tight end and starting him in their championship game.
Well, this is the thing with Kmet in this offense is that they've really started to rely on him a little bit more. And he's making great catches, and he's starting to show a little ability after the catch. I think a lot of people, if you're a fan of the Chicago Bears, you're hoping you see him wearing the number 85, and you want him to be our version of George Kittle, which is a lofty bar. Like, that's high. Like, George Kittle might be the best non-quarterback in the NFL. So that's a little bit like, okay, like, you don't have to be that good. But I think that you can be a reasonable facsimile. And, you know, you look at some of the guys I'm starting them over, Jared Cook, Tyler Higbee, Conklin there. I think that, you know, you're not starting them over any elite tight end, but if you have been streaming tight ends over the last couple of weeks, you find yourself in a situation with a tight end that you don't want to start. Perhaps you were playing CJ Uzomah last week because you liked the matchup against the Ravens, which was a good one. By the way, that was a bummer. I think Joe Mixon got all of his targets, which really was unfortunate. But I think Cole Kmet is a really nice option this week against the Giants, no matter who the starting quarterback is.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in on Cole Kmet. One that we disagree on a little bit, and I feel like the tables have turned right now because you've been the Kyle Pitts defender all year, and I've been a little bit more crucial against him. But right now, you're saying you would sit Kyle Pitts in the championship game.
Yeah, you know what? Again, I think he's great. I think that he's performed pretty well this year. I think the expectations for him were sky high, and it's going to be very difficult for somebody to come in and live up to. Everybody expected him to be Odell Beckham Jr. in his rookie season, like have that kind of production. But he's still been very productive for the Falcons. The thing is, and here's the thing, is that he's very good at receiving yards. He does not get into the end zone. You see right there, he has taken over for Julio Jones as the guy they don't go to when they're in the red zone. 1 touchdown this season. So you're relying on him for catches and receiving yards. The Bills do not allow tight ends to top 65 receiving yards. They just don't do it. Last week, they were going up against Hunter Henry, coming off a monster, and they shut him down. And I know that Kyle Pitts is probably a little bit better than Hunter Henry, but the thing is, Buffalo, your Bills do not allow tight ends to run wild. And when I have that dome Matt Ryan in Buffalo, I'm avoiding it, Michael Frank.
I get your reasoning. I do. The reason I would still be in on Kyle Pitts is because he's good for about 6 targets a game, the air yards and red zone usage. I know they don't like to throw to him the ball in the end zone, but they've at least been trying in the red zone as of late. So I think he still comes in as like a low-end tight end one. But I agree, the matchup is tough. It's more because he's a tight end. Like that's really it.
Yeah, I understand all that, but it's one of those things. The touchdown is so important. It's one of the reasons why we like the Dawson in the last 2 games against the Patriots. It didn't work out the first time. He did get that touchdown the second time. I think that the touchdown potential is why you take risks with players like that. So with Kyle Pitts, him not being a factor in the red zone really hurts him. And I think, again, it's difficult because in season-long leagues, like, I don't know, do you really want to go pick up Cole Kmet? Like, I love Cole Kmet, and I think, yeah, he's fine. It's very difficult for me. I think this is also like, but if you're in DFS, like, there's no way you're spending the money on Kyle Pitts.
I agree with that 100%. Definitely more just a season-long play because he's a tight end, and tight end has been brutal all year long. Hopefully, Kyle Pitts can make the tight end position a little bit better next season. But right now, we're still focusing on championship week. So up next, the championship is on the line. It is time to go big or go home. Our sizzling starts of the weeks coming up right after the break.
We are the champions. Time now for Colonel's Starts of the Week, presented by KFC. And we're going to start at the quarterback position with a young man that I have been starting for the entirety of the season. For some reason, Philadelphia fans don't like Jalen Hurts, but fantasy enthusiasts love him, and we love him this week against the Washington football team. Last week, the Dallas Cowboys scored about, I think it was 90 points. I don't know. You might want to check my math on that. But they absolutely destroyed this Washington FT team. And this week, I expect a very similar performance by Jalen Hurts, who faced this Washington team a couple of weeks ago, scored close to 30 fantasy points. He was running for touchdowns. He was throwing for touchdowns. He's amazing. Make sure you are starting him. Let's move to the running back position. And Rashad Penny has been a very interesting player during his NFL career. A lot of people were shocked when the Seahawks drafted him out of San Diego State a number of years ago. And he's been a little bit of a fantasy disappointment through the entirety of his career. But over the last couple of weeks, he has been excellent. As you see right there, over 130 rushing yards in 2 out of his last 3. Got into the end zone against the Bears last week. And the weather will continue to be poor in Seattle this week. So we do like the opportunity for Rashad Penny to put up another huge fantasy performance, this time delivering fantasy championships to you. And finally, at the wide receiver position, let's take a moment and talk about A.J. Brown. Yeah, I knew what I was saying. A.J. Brown, last week we loved him. We talked about making sure that A.J. Brown was in your starting lineup. It was a tough decision for some of you, not Michael Frank and me and Kimmy. We all said start A.J. Brown, and he went out there and dominated. He's averaging over 27 fantasy points in 3 out of his last 6 games where he's scored that. He is an unstoppable monster. So if you have him, he is a guy that they like to refer to as a league winner. So start him. And those were your Colonel starts of the week presented by KFC. Michael?
Rank, normally we make you run on over for this part, but now you're just going to be able to stay in your seat. It's time for us to answer some questions and what we like to call take it to the rank. So Rank, let's drop some knowledge. Our first fan question is from Ricardo. He needs to pick one between Burrow or Brady.
Can I tell you something? Can I say something? Tom Brady has been like the quarterback 25 during the fantasy playoffs. I am so disappointed in him. But I kind of like him more than Joey Burrow this week.
Yeah, me too. I would play him. It's the Jets. He gets the
Jets.
It is
the Jets.
This is an opportunity forever.
I think it's, you know what? I think it's going to be like the Lions last year, where he throws for like 20 touchdowns. He's got to get back, and he knows he's been struggling.
He does. And Rank, John, who has not been struggling because he's in the championship, he needs to know, should he go Ronald Jones or Najee Harris in a full PPR league?
Oh my gosh. Is it weird that I want to go Ronald Jones?
I have Najee Harris ranked just higher, but I want to go Ronald Jones too.
I have them 8 and 9. I have Ronald Jones higher. So if I'm going by my rankings, I got to go with Ronald Jones.
Boom. The matchup literally could not get any better for Ronald Jones. He gets the Jets who give the most fantasy points. Rank, Parlor John wants to know, Trey Lance or your boy Kirk? I'm not even going to say his last name. He's just Kirk on this show.
No,
so Lance or Kirk?
Listen, we talked about it earlier in the show. I'm going Kirk Cousins. I honestly believe that, you know what? Trey Lance will have like 100. You got to figure, like, he's going to throw for a touchdown. You're really hoping that Trey Lance is going to run for a touchdown, because I don't think he's going to throw for more than one. You're hoping he runs one in for you. I don't know. Like, I just like the situation of the Vikings having to throw the football to keep up with the Green Bay Packers. So for me, I know, like, dome quarterback outside, like, a lot of things that I don't like about Kirk this week, but I got to go with them.
I get it. I would play Lance, but I do admit it's basically a coin flip between those two. And I think we have one more question.
Oh, geez.
Right. Mark needs to know, would you play DeAndre Swift in his first game back over a struggling Cordero Patterson for the championship?
I think if Swift is playing, that they intend to use him. So if he's active and ready to go, I would imagine, like, they got to get him into the lineup, right? Like, that makes the most sense to me. Cordell Patterson, they've kind of peeled back on his usage over the last couple of weeks, and this is such a tough matchup. I know that we've seen Buffalo drop some games that were inexcusable this season, the Jacksonville game being chief among them. I hope that they have that out of their system, and I hope that they're now in just grind mode and they destroy this Atlanta team. So I guess I got to go Swift if he's available to you.
Yeah, I'm going Swift because Seattle struggles mightily against running backs catching passes, and Patterson's targets have just been going down. But that's it for our fan questions, our final fan questions of the year. But Rank, before we go, we still got to go to the club, right? It is time for Club Dub Players of the Week. Let's talk about some players that we guarantee will score at least 25 fantasy points and help you win a championship. So Rank, who are you bringing to the club with you?
Well, first of all, I never thought I was going to be the old guy who is now drinking coffee in the club, but this is where my life is at now. My club dubber is going to be Deebo Samuel going up against the Houston Texans. Earlier this year, way back in August, we had talked about this week. We had talked about making sure that you kept Trey Lance on the bench for this very game. We wanted all the studs. We wanted Kittle. We wanted Brandon Ayuk. We wanted Trey Sermon. Okay, the last one didn't work out. But Deebo Samuel has been averaging over 20 fantasy points per game this year. He is a monster. He is going to go out there and have a huge game. And this is kind of why I don't like Trey Lance this much this week, is that I feel like they're going to run. They're going to run with Deebo. They're going to run with JWJ. And they're going to try to just limit it for Trey Lance. He's not going to have to do a whole lot. You're hoping he's going to have that one touchdown pass like he did in preseason. But I think this is all Kittle. This is all Deebo. It's going to be counting on those guys to win it for you. And Deebo is the guy that I absolutely want in my lineup this week.
Completely agree. I think they're going to get really creative with Deebo and make sure that he can be used as a pass catcher and as a runner this week. I'm going with someone that we spoke a little bit about earlier. I'm going with Ronald Jones. I got the money gun out for Mr. Jones. Do not let me down. It's the best possible matchup a running back could get. The Jets give up the most fantasy points, the most touchdowns, the most yards per game to running backs. And Ronald Jones had 22 touches last week. He only turned it in to 16 fantasy points. But if he's getting 20 or more touches against the Jets this week, and I think more is possible if they're blowing them out or having with a lead late, I think he'll turn it into a lot more than 16 fantasy points. I think you can bank on him getting you around 25 this week. So Ronald Jones, I know we haven't always been the best of friends, but I'm inviting you out this week to the club with me. And those watching, if you want more fantasy advice, be sure to watch Rank, Marcus, and myself this Sunday on NFL Fantasy Game Day. The fun starts at noon Eastern, and we're taking you all the way up to championship kickoff. We'll have the latest actives, inactives, starts, burning questions, sleepers, and more. You know where to catch us, but just in case, the NFL Fantasy app, the NFL app, NFL.com, and on YouTube. Rank.
That's a lot.
Sadly. Yeah, it was a lot. And sadly, this is our last show of the year. So I just wanted to take a quick second to thank you, to thank Kimmy Checks, to thank producer Hytham and Tandem and all the specialists behind the scenes. Without all of you guys, none of this is possible. And of course, none of this would be possible without everyone who watches and listens and checks out all of our content. So just thank you to the great team that helps put this show together and to everyone who watches it, because Rank, otherwise we would just be talking into the abyss about football and no one would really listen.
Yeah, I do want to echo your sentiments about the great staff that we have and with Rick and Hytham and Matthew and Jason and Zach and Christy and everybody, Parker. I know I'm forgetting people and they're going to be very upset with me. This is why you don't name names and you just do the general, like, thanks to the staff. But I do want to thank everybody who has helped put this show together. But also, thanks to Kimmy Checks for hosting it. And Michael, I just wanted to say also to you, very proud of the job that you've done this year, coming in and hosting the show today, and you've done it some other weeks too. Just to see your growth, you know, for people who don't understand, you know, Michael joined us as a part-time researcher, and now he's killing the game. So I could not be more proud of you, and thank you for all of your hard work. And dude, we couldn't do it without you.
Rank, that was so sweet of you, but I don't know how you forgot the amazing Lauren who worked so hard on this show each and every week. But that's just me. But yeah. I echo everything Rank said there. And so everyone who was watching, thank you so much for watching the show this season.
Even you, internet guy, we love you.
Thanks for watching the Stardom Stidham Show presented by Bridgestone Tires. Now go get that championship.